Okay, so think about this for a second. How does something as tiny and, let's be honest, fragile as a fruit fly manage to survive a long, brutal winter? I mean, it seems completely impossible, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the incredible biological switch that lets them do exactly that. It's a fascinating strategy that all comes down to one tough choice: reproduce or survive.
And yeah, it's a really serious question. You've got this tiny little insect facing freezing temperatures and basically no food for months on end. So how in the world does it pull it off? How does it survive a season that, by all accounts, should be the end of it?
So, while bears are off hibernating and birds are flying south for the winter, the fruit fly has its own very unique survival plan. It doesn't just go to sleep. Nope. It does something way more extreme. It hits pause on one of its most basic biological instincts, making more fruit flies.
This state has a name. It's called reproductive dormancy. And you can think of it like a biological emergency brake. The fly's body basically says, all right, things are bad out there. All energy is now being rerouted from making eggs to the number one job, just staying alive. It's a total strategic shutdown, all to wait for better days.
Now this is where things get really cool. Scientists over at Tohoku University were determined to find the exact biological off switch that kicks off this whole dormancy thing. And to do that, they had to create a totally convincing artificial winter right there in their lab. They wanted to see if they could flip that switch themselves, on command.
So what's the recipe for a lab-made winter? Well, the scientists created a perfect storm of stress. First, they cranked the temperature down to a chilly 11 degrees Celsius. Next, they shortened the days, giving the flies just 10 hours of light. But the real kicker, the final ingredient, was starvation, giving them nothing but water. That is the ultimate signal that winter is here. And wow, did it work. I mean, just look at this. This slide is all the proof you need. What you're seeing are the flies' ovaries. Under normal, happy conditions, up here in the top pictures, they're big and developed, all ready to go. But then look at the ovaries from the flies in that lab-made winter. Down here at the bottom. They're tiny. They're completely undeveloped. The entire reproductive factory has just shut down.
And the numbers tell the exact same story. When the flies were cold and had short days but still got food, only about 16% of them went dormant. But the second you add starvation to that mix, boom, the number just skyrockets to over 60%. This tells us that that combination of triggers is an incredibly reliable way to kick them into survival mode.
All right, so we've seen what happens, and we know what triggers it. But, that just leads to the next big question in this whole mystery. How? How does the fly's body actually make this call? What's the master controller pulling all the strings behind the scenes?
Well, it turns out the answer is in the brain. Now, this slide has a lot going on, but it all points to one very specific spot, a little group of neurons called insulin-producing cells, or IPCs for short. You can think of these cells as the mission control. They're the ones getting all the reports from the outside world, temperature, light, food, and they make the final go or no-go decision.
And the rule that these cells follow is actually pretty simple. When the IPCs are firing on all cylinders, buzzing with high activity, that's the go signal. Go, reproduce. But when all that environmental stress makes their activity drop, that's the stop signal. The body shuts down reproduction and hunkers down for survival. It's a beautifully simple on-off switch.
That's a great theory, right? But scientists, they need proof. So they decided to take matters into their own hands. Instead of just letting the environment do the work, they used some clever genetic tools to literally reach into the fly's brain and flip that switch themselves, turning these specific cells on or off.
So for their first test, they forced the IPCs to stay active. They basically jammed that go reproduce signal into the on position. And the result? Absolutely stunning. Even when the poor flies were cold, in the dark, and starving, their bodies just refused to go dormant. That artificial brain signal completely overrode all those powerful cues from the environment.
And here we see the brilliant flip side. In the next experiment, they did the exact opposite. They artificially shut the IPCs down, sending a constant stop signal. And what happened? The flies went into dormancy in huge numbers, even when it was warm, bright, and they had plenty of food. This right here was the smoking gun. It proved, without a doubt, that the IPCs are the master switch.
Okay, so the decision is made in the brain. But the ovaries, the things that actually need to shut down, are way down in the abdomen. So how does that command from the brain's mission control actually get delivered to the rest of the body?
Well, the message travels through a chemical messenger, a hormone called, fittingly, juvenile hormone, or JH. It's made by these little glands called the corpora allata, and you can think of this hormone as the final physical on-off switch. If JH levels are high, reproduction is a go. If levels are low, reproduction is off. Simple as that.
So now we can actually map out the entire chain of command from start to finish. It all begins with those winter signals: cold, dark, no food. That causes the brain's IPCs to quiet down. Their reduced signal then tells the corpora allata glands, hey, ease up on the juvenile hormone. And that drop in the hormone is the final memo that reaches the ovaries, telling them to stop what they're doing.
You know, the researchers who did this study summed it up perfectly in their paper. They said this one hormone, juvenile hormone, is the decider. It is the literal switch that flips the entire fly between a high-energy active state and a low-energy survival state.
And here it is, the whole shebang, the complete blueprint for survival, straight from the study. This one diagram ties together everything we've just talked about. It shows the two completely opposite states a fruit fly can be in. Over on the left, you've got the path for an active reproducing fly, and over on the right, you've got the path to dormancy. So let's just quickly walk through each one.
First up, the go state. When times are good, lots of food, long summer days, the brain's IPCs are fired up. They stimulate those CA glands, which then pump out tons of juvenile hormone. And all that hormone tells the ovaries it's time to mature and make eggs. It is a system-wide green light for growth.
And now, the dormant state. When those harsh winter conditions show up, the IPCs go quiet. That silence suppresses the CA glands, which causes juvenile hormone levels to just plummet. That huge drop in hormone is the signal for the ovaries to stop development and go into a kind of suspended animation. All systems shift to survival mode.
So why is this so important beyond just fruit flies? Because this whole pathway, this link between the brain's IPCs and the CA glands, what scientists call the IPC-CA axis, it's not unique at all. It's actually a fundamental survival kit that countless other insect species use to survive everything from brutal winters to scorching droughts.
You know, figuring out an elegant biological switch like this is just an amazing reminder that even the tiniest creatures have these incredibly sophisticated ways of solving life's biggest challenges. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In the huge, complex web of life, what other amazing survival superpowers are still out there just waiting for us to discover them?